Aloha and welcome to the COVID-19 Care Conversation brought to you by the Hawaii Executive Collaborative and Hawaii Pacific Health. I'm Yunji Denise along with Ryan Kalei-Suji. It's been quite a journey, Ryan, and today is our final show in this series.
That's right. We began all the way back on March 25th. It's hard to believe that it has been this long, but of course we've enjoyed getting to know some of you. We've had some loyal viewers who tune in every single day and of course bringing you the information that you need. Today, we have a very special guest. We have Micah Kane from the Hawaii Community Foundation who will be joining us. You know, Hawaii Community Foundation is an organization that we've been talking a lot about on this show and just their efforts and their support for the community over these past few months dealing with COVID. And so we wanted to talk to him a little bit more about what the organization is doing, has done, and ways that you can continue to get support and help out as well. We thought it was pretty fitting that we talked to them on our final show just because they have been so much a part of this conversation.
Absolutely. You know, we highlight a Hawaii hero of the day every day. We've done that from the beginning because there are so many people doing amazing things to help out during the pandemic. But inevitably, we say so-and-so is doing this in partnership with the Hawaii Community Foundation. So we want to go straight to the source today to talk about what are the needs in the community, because they, more than anyone else, really knows what the needs on the ground are. They hear from various organizations about whether it's nutrition needs, housing assistance, healthcare, all of that. So we're really excited to talk to Micah Kane. Also really excited, Ryan, about yesterday's count.
That's right. Just 2 new cases reported and actually 1 was removed. So the total positive cases since the outbreak here in Hawaii is 900. So really in these past 3 weeks, Hawaii has had an uptick, and we've seen these numbers kind of go up and down. A lot of it related to some of these larger gatherings, of course, with things sort of opening back up and people being much more social and being out. We've seen those numbers go up. We've talked to health officials as well as state leaders who've been talking about the state's really overall ability to now address some of these case numbers, and that they say that the state is in a much better place than it was when this all started. And that they weren't really concerned with those numbers because they were able to continue with that contact tracing. But good always to hear those single digit reported as we saw yesterday.
Yeah, and it does show you just how much of a roller coaster this is, because just the day before we had 27 cases. So to go from 27 to 2, we don't know what the case number is yet for today. We'll wait for that at noon. But it is a reminder, of course, that we can have such an impact if we continue to do the things that we've been asking for from the beginning, which is to wash your hands, socially distance, and wear a mask. These are simple steps, but they do require a lot of vigilance. You know, they're simple on their own, but taken day after day, every time you go out. And I mean, even yesterday when I was leaving the house just for a quick errand, I realized halfway to the door, like, oh my goodness, I forgot my mask. And then you turn around and it just becomes, you know, part of your routine. But it is something that is so important, just that simple act. You really can save lives and do so much good for our community just with your own individual action.
That's right. It's phone, keys, wallet, mask. Now, you have to add a 4th to that when you make sure you leave the door. But as we mentioned earlier at the top of the broadcast, we are going to be joined today by our special guest. And joining us now is Micah Kane from the Hawaii Community Foundation to talk a little bit more about their efforts in this whole COVID-19 pandemic. Good to see you, Micah. Thank you so much for spending time with us this morning.
Thanks for having me, Ryan. It's good to see you as well, Yunji.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Let's start out with the question of asks and need. What are you seeing? You know, you've been responding to the need throughout the pandemic. In the beginning, it was just getting people masks on the ground. It was doing those food distributions. What are you hearing now going forward? Where are the biggest needs in our community?
We're seeing it pretty spread across the community, across all needs right now. Unfortunately, we haven't seen a drop in food needs. We're still servicing the food requirements out there. We're seeing at least 3 times pre-COVID numbers in terms of food. We're out there still providing emergency grants to families that are allowing them to pay for utility or rent payments. We're also taking a step into the recovery arena as well, though, and trying to keep our eye on the horizon and not looking down at our feet. We launched a program with First Hawaiian Bank a couple weeks ago, focused on the class of 2020, giving them the necessary support so that they can bridge into a post-secondary opportunity. We launched a Hawaii Stronger Together Fund, which dovetails a program under the University of Hawaii that provides counseling and classes. They call that the Next Step program. There's about 3,000 kids in that program. And so while we're still seeing great need in PPE, in food, in emergency grants, we're trying to step into the recovery phase as well for those needs that we are forecasting on the horizon.
You know, one of the, of course, the biggest contributing factors in all of this has been the resiliency fund that Hawaii Community Foundation has set up and sort of established. If you can sort of give us an update on where you folks are at with that fund, maybe how it started and how it sort of manifested itself, of course, through this effort, and sort of where you guys are at right now in this effort to the response.
Yeah, the fund is 105 days old right now. We're approaching $12 million in raised, and we have about $11 million out the door. We're still actively trying to encourage people to contribute to the fund because the needs, as I just mentioned, are still great. But we think we've had the impact that we had hoped. It's been a catalyst towards other giving for us to leverage other activities and partners to come to the table. We've been blessed with having really, really good and active partners. Bank of Hawaii stepped up really big early on with a $3 million contribution that really allowed us to set the partnership with the city and county of Honolulu. Without that money, we just wouldn't have been there. We also would not have been there without First Hawaiian Bank's major contribution in our Stronger Together Fund. So we've been very fortunate with the number of individuals and organizations as well as partners that have stepped up and been there with us.
You know, the legislature right now is making decisions on all that CARES Act money. We heard from the folks at Appleseed yesterday about $100 million going to help housing and mortgage payments and mortgage consultation, if you will, to make sure that people can stay in their homes. How is HCF going to be involved in sort of helping to guide where that funding goes when it comes to the legislature handing out that money?
Well, one of the things we tried to do early on was share the information we're learning at the grants that we're executing. And so we've been extremely active in communicating with Speaker Saiki, communicating with Chair Luke, communicating with Senate President Ron Kochi, as well as Governor Ige and his team. And there's some spaces that we have some capacity to interface and support government in the execution of the CARES Act money. You mentioned emergency grants. We think there's an opportunity for us to participate in some way there. We launched a early childhood care grant, early child care grant program during the COVID crisis. It was a small amount of money, about $300,000 that targeted 100 grant caregivers. And it looks like the legislature is going to really step up and put about $15 million into that effort, and that's something that we could probably help them with. They're also matching our Hawaii Stronger Together Fund, so that $2 million that is dedicated to the class of 2020 kids, they're doubling down, and so that's going to make a huge impact there as well. It looks like we might play a role there. And they're really stepping up on the food side. They're dedicating about $5 million towards extending the food program that we launched in partnership with Bank of Hawaii and Hawaii Food Bank. And I think that's gonna really help us to fill those gaps between now and the end of the year. So we've tried to just base our recommendations on data that we received, and I think we've developed quite a good partnership.
You know, when you look at sort of the overall scale of where we started from and sort of where we're at now and where we're going, can you explain to us what the future holds for how Hawaii Community Foundation will help out in these efforts? Because we know early on it was sort of that rapid response, trying to help as many people as possible during this time. But as we look sort of down towards the future, there obviously are still going to be needs much different than from when it started. How will the Hawaii Community Foundation maybe help out in sort of the later phases of this as we head into the next season, if you will, of COVID-19?
Sure. I mean, our role really is to fill gaps that government can't fill. We can never supplant them. We can move faster. We can be a catalyst for innovative thinking, to try things that maybe government doesn't have the nimbleness to do, and we're doing that already. We launched a partnership with Maui County to launch a financial opportunity center that will service 3,000 families with financial literacy training and personal capacity building. You know, that will carry for the next 6 months to a year. And so that's a move that maybe government can't do alone, that we're going to have to play a role in. We're working hard to raise some funds for UHERO and Carl Bonham's team. We saw the role that they played in the early days of COVID, and we're going to need them to really step up in the years ahead. And so it's important that we play a role in helping to invest in that platform, so that Carl has the resources to help us forecast where Hawaii is going to be needing to place its bets so that our economy can come back. So, Ryan, I think our role really is to continue to try to be nimble as possible, be smart with our funds, be as transparent as we can on what we're learning, and to just to help this community in any way we can. We don't have a set place in way we want to be. We want to be as helpful to this community as we possibly can.
You know, a lot of people would love to help out as well, but they don't necessarily have financial resources to do that. Absent donating to the Resilience Fund, which I know you're always up for, taking more donations, but absent that, how can people help your efforts?
I think the way you started this program, Yunji, you started off by reminding people to do what's in their power. And what's in their power is to be reminded of the social distancing recommendations that are being made, to wash our hands, to wear a mask, to be conscious of when we gather, especially when we're around kupuna, who are very, if they get exposed, they're very vulnerable. And we have to remember of the exponential exposure that we cause each other because of the relationships that we have and the activities we present. We can't understate the importance of that. Beyond that, it's taking care of your neighbor. It's a little old school, back to the old days of Hawaii, but that's really what's going to carry us through. It's picking up on those cues when we know a neighbor is in need, and just supporting them.
Yeah, well said. Micah, hard to believe, but just last November, the three of us were all together on Giving Tuesday, right here live on the platform of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser. Seems like a lifetime ago, with so much has happened since then. But back then we were sort of trying to raise money as well for the Hawaii Community Foundation and Giving Tuesday, because there was needs in the community. My question, Saito, goes to what happens to those other organizations, of course, that still need support. I think that's one of the challenges right now, is that COVID, of course, is present, and a lot of needs there, but there was also just the needs that we had last year that, you folks were trying to raise from. How do you find that balance between trying to manage the needs of today as well as the needs that were already there?
Yeah, as you recall, Ryan, as you stated, going into COVID, we were positioned pretty well in addressing some of Hawaii's major inequities. We teamed up with the Hawaii Executive Collaborative to initiate partnership with the legislature to focus on three areas: affordable housing, income inequality, and early learning. And we had three packages of bills that the governor, state senate, and state legislature were all unified around. And then we got hit by COVID. So I think what that told us was that we have the ability to come together with one voice to address the issues of that time. That's pivoted a little bit, and we're gonna have to remain in solidarity around where those focuses need to be. It has definitely upset our industry significantly, just as it has impacted our economy. And our sector, the nonprofit community, is going to need to adjust in the same way that we're going to be asking our economy to adjust. And again, try to be as nimble as possible to help make our way through. It's not going to be an easy journey, and we're going to have to, again, lock arms and go for it.
We had some folks on from Aloha United Way last week talking about the new ALICE report, that, of course, are people who are limited in assets and are perhaps one car breakdown, one medical emergency, one missed rent payment away from being in a very difficult financial situation. And the numbers that she presented were pre-COVID. Now, when we look forward, what are your concerns about the most vulnerable in our community, and what, what needs do you see right now and going forward when it comes to the ALICE families?
Yeah, and you folks are very aware, going into COVID, we were highly focused on the ALICE needs, and what we saw in COVID is just an exacerbation of those needs. And so the playbook really hasn't changed much. It just means that we're going to have to double down on our effort. There's no silver bullet to that, I think. And we're going to have to get back to those three huge inequities that we were addressing prior to, so that we have a much more resilient community. But at the same time, I think we have to hyper-focus on our economy, and we have to be thoughtful about how we can get enough economic activity going to support our needs. At the same time, do it in a way where we're conscious of all the social distancing and mandates that we should be aware of. That balance is going to be tricky. But I think those are the three variables we need to pay attention to: are the ability for our healthcare system to support our needs, the COVID mandates that actually determine kind of our way of life and the impact that it has on economic growth, and then thirdly, our economic growth. How do we manage those three variables so that we have the greatest and fastest acceleration of our economy, in our opinion right now? It's the greatest philanthropic gift we can give Hawaii.
Micah, you've been sort of around the circles here in Hawaii for some time now. If you can sort of speak to what you have seen in terms of people coming together. I think one of the things that we've noticed through this broadcast is the resiliency of the people of Hawaii and the coming together. We're seeing companies and organizations doing some really innovative things to give back to the community and things that we would have never thought of. Can you speak to that, of how these organizations who were once maybe competitors in some markets are coming together and helping the community? And what have you seen in sort of this effort to help Hawaii?
It's been quite amazing, and I was having a conversation with a friend last week about it. If you're in Portland, you can lean on Seattle, or if you're in San Diego, you can lean on LA. In Hawaii, they're leaning out. We can't lean out. We have to lean in, and that leaning in really is what you're seeing today, a recognition that we have the ability to care for each other and to look within our community. So much of that is happening right now with the tutu who is knitting a mask and taking them down to the Y so that other people have the mask they need. Restaurants, as tough as it is for them, they're still out there handing out free meals. I mean, you're seeing it with Pagoda, who is a major contributor in our community right now, and others. It's amazing, Ryan. It's not easy for them. It's touching, and it's what Hawaii's all about. So it's nice to see.
Well, we have a lot of complimentary messages coming in. This one from Monica saying, "Mahalo to you and the Hawaii Community Foundation for all that you're doing to support those with the greatest needs." For people who are in need, what would you tell them? It can feel pretty overwhelming. They may be out of work for a long time now. They may be struggling with unemployment benefits, and those benefits, the plus up is sunsetting at the end of the month. Mm-hmm. Where would you advise them to go to get help if they need it?
Well, first off, I would recommend going to Aloha United's Way 211 number. They're a good conduit of information to get going. I'd also recommend that they go on our website and look at the grantees that we're awarding funds to. And if there's a need that's qualified under the services that they're providing, reach out to those service providers. But I'll also say to pay attention to this this end of this legislative session. The legislature is looking to make some pretty bold moves that we think is going to be able to extend some of that need through the balance of the year, provide our key government leaders an opportunity to get our feet set to bring back our economy. And so I think being informed is a really good point, and appreciate what you folks are all doing, right? And Yuji, I know that this is the last show of this series, but we sure hope that you folks continue. Folks have been an incredible resource for the community. You guys always show up. So thank you for what you folks are doing.
Well, thank you, Micah, for just taking time, of course, to join us this morning. And of course, just for everything the Hawaii Community Foundation continues to do for our community. And we appreciate just the time spent talking to you this morning.
It's mutual. Thanks, guys.
Aloha. Thank you so much. Well, he's right. It starts with the simple personal responsibility of doing all the things we talked about at the top, wearing the mask, socially distancing, washing your hands, but also, being aware of the people around you and identifying the needs in your own community. I mean, if there's somebody that you know who can't go get groceries or can't, do all the things that they need to do right now, there are ways that you can help, and or you can make a call to 211 to help to ask for resources for that person or for yourself.
Yeah, and I think, as I mentioned, one of the great things that we've had the opportunity in doing this program for 3 months has been seeing how the community has come together through our Hawaii Hero segment, and just the innovation of things that have come about and ways that people have been able to contribute, albeit sometimes in a very small way, but still making a significant impact in the community. And no doubt the Hawaii Community Foundation continuing to do that through their partnerships and their efforts to support those organizations to fill the needs and the gaps in our community. Of course, we always like to also talk about some of the other headlines that are happening right now in Hawaii and some of the things that are making news today here in Hawaii.
Yeah, one of the big things, of course, is everyone's looking to the weekend. We've seen, unfortunately, over the weekend, we saw all those double digits, including 27 new cases reported on Sunday, just 2 yesterday. So that's great news. But, people are really attributing a lot of that, and it's hard to know exactly, but to family gatherings, to perhaps religious gatherings, and also to Memorial Day celebrations, and just when people are getting together. And we are seeing, at least in my own life, when I look around, we're seeing that people are getting a little COVID fatigue, perhaps, and maybe getting a little relaxed. And it is in our culture to hug each other, to give aloha. And so people are looking at, policymakers and health officials are looking to this weekend where we have the July 4th holiday with some trepidation.
That's right. And really, they're making it known that they will be sort of out and about. DLNR also reminding people about activities that are happening on the water, reminding people that it is, illegal to be drinking at the sandbar over the weekend, as well as gathering in some of these things that we've seen, flotillas that have also happened in the past during this weekend. So they are on high alert, of course, recognizing the dangers that already presents. But when you factor in COVID-19 to the mix, they are also reminding people about those social distancing efforts. We expect to see a lot of people also on the beaches. So they're reminding people about gathering sizes and keeping that social distance. I'm sure the parks and beaches will be packed this weekend. So they're very mindful of all that things that are happening and trying to remind people to really use common sense when it comes to just trying to make sure that we can continue to control COVID-19. All of this as the state sort of continues to ramp up its efforts to provide that option for travelers to take a test prior to coming to Hawaii, so they don't have to take that 14-day mandatory quarantine. Of course, we've heard from the governor and other state officials that is going into effect on August 1st. And so really the state now trying to find ways and really to communicate that message to travelers that are coming into the state of Hawaii about some of the efforts that they're going to have to undertake and be aware of when coming to the islands. Yeah,
I mean, they're sort of writing the plan as they go. We've heard from the lieutenant governor and the governor himself that there is no consensus on the child issue, on what we should do when it comes to minors and testing. And there is this sort of hiccup that, are these tests even available to children? Some pharmacies don't offer them to minors. But, will they be required? Will they not? We're expecting an announcement sometime this week with more details in terms of families who are coming to the islands. And Dave Jimmy says no one can predict the future of travel. That is absolutely right. The state doing their best to, of course, open this big part of our economy, while at the same time protecting all of the gains that we've made, because Hawaii has gone through so much economic pain and suffering to have, really wonderful results when it comes to our mortality rate and our viral rate. But at the same time, we obviously need those tourist dollars to come back. One of the key things, of course, is contact tracing. Another headline in the paper today talking about how there was a driver for the bus here in Honolulu who tested positive for COVID. And so they have listed in the paper all the routes that particular driver was on when he came to work. They say that he was sick they believe for several days before he actually was tested and confirmed. So there is potential exposure there. It's very difficult for them, obviously, to track down every single person who rode the bus. But if you can look at those routes, figure out if you perhaps were on one of those routes, you are eligible for testing at 5 health centers here in Honolulu. So if you or someone was potentially on a city bus in that window, please go look at those routes and see if you need to get tested. It's much better to be safe than sorry. The more we can test and figure out where these clusters are, the more rapidly we can shut them down.
That's right. And again, all that information, of course, is in the paper, including some of the articles that we talked about, with Hawaii rebranding itself and the message that they're sending to tourists, as well as all the latest headlines. Make sure you head over to the Honolulu Star-Advertiser.com for those headlines. We are sort of going to be shifting gears as we move forward. As we've mentioned a few times now, this is our last show here on the COVID-19 care conversation. And it has been a sort of wild ride for both of us to sort of start this as an experiment and really become something that we have been fortunate enough to do, to be able to bring you this conversation and to be able to speak to leaders throughout this process. But we will be sort of shifting gears beginning on Monday.
That's right. July 6th, we are shifting the conversation. It is no longer strictly COVID, although COVID touches everything in Hawaii and around the world right now. So it is still part of the conversation. But we're calling this Spotlight Hawaii, and we're going to be taking on different, topics. And we're starting out in July with politics and the Honolulu mayor's race. Politics is very different. We've talked about this, the canvassing, the door-to-door. Even for a while, there was no sign waving because they didn't want groups gathering. And you can't necessarily go have coffee with a candidate or go to a Rotary Club or a high school and have these interactions. So we are bringing the candidates to you. Along with the editorial board, we've settled on 6 candidates for Honolulu mayor, and we will be having one-on-one in-depth conversations on Mondays and Wednesdays in July with those top 6. Of course, voting happens August 8th in the primary. And Ryan, we're really looking forward to talking to these folks. Our first week, and this was decided in random order, but I'll give you the full list. It's Colleen Hanabusa, Mufi Hanneman, Rick Blangiardi, Chun James, Keith Amamiya, and then we rounded out with Kim Pine. So Colleen Hanabusa is first. She'll be joining us on Monday.
That's right. So we encourage all of you to, of course, tune in, but also we want to know what you want to know. We want to know what questions you have for these candidates and where they stand on some of these issues. Of course, COVID-19 will be a part of this discussion, as the next mayor will have to tackle these issues, including the overall city budget, how they're going to manage that with the resources that they have, and the decrease, obviously, in tax revenue for the city in providing services while also trying to battle this pandemic. But we also want to talk about rail, of course, is a hot issue. We know that there are many other things that are concerning the residents of the city and county of Honolulu. So we want to know what questions you want us to ask. Please enter them into the comment sections. And of course, you can always tune in on these days to hear from the candidates directly. We're going to do some different fun things that we hope will be engaging for not only them, but for you as well. And beyond the candidates, we will also be speaking to members of the Office of Election as Hawaii moves to all mail-in voting, so providing you information on that. We'll also be hearing from Governor Ige later in the month in July to sort of get an update where the state is. He's been gracious in volunteering offering his time every Monday to be able to join us. And so we'll be joining back with him later in July to sort of get an update right before the state opens up on that August 1st date. So we encourage all of you to continue to tune in. And again, thank you for being a part of this conversation so far. But luckily, we can continue on in this other way.
That's right. And we also want to, of course, thank again our sponsors, Hawaii Pacific Health and the Hawaii Executive Collaborative. The Hawaii Executive Collaborative, for those of you who don't know, is a consortium of business and civic leaders here in Hawaii that are doing amazing things in partnership with groups like Hawaii Community Foundation. So we encourage you to check out Hawaii Executive Collaborative's social media, whether it's their website, their Instagram. They're always posting things that they're involved in. These are people who are really helping to shape the direction and the future of Hawaii. So it's good to be aware of what they're doing. And we really thank them for making this possible, because it has been such a privilege to be part of this conversation with them and with you.
That's why we specifically want to thank Linda Marble for her help in getting this conversation going. She's been a part of this, as well as our producer, Kira Diono, who has also been helping us to get this together. There's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes. It's not just Yanji and I. There's a lot of people that, of course, help us to bring you this show every day. So we want to give a quick shout out to those two for all their help. And of course, we always like to end our show by highlighting a Hawaii hero, somebody who we've already highlighted, but again, we want to highlight the Hawaii Community Foundation, of course, for their efforts and what they continue to do for our community. Yanji, you've mentioned it earlier on, but we continue to always mention Hawaii Community Foundation in their partnerships with so many of the other organizations, but they've really been a key stakeholder in this effort to help those in need.
They absolutely have. And as you heard, Micah Kane says, if you're an individual who is in need and you're looking to get some help, a good place to start is Aloha United Way 211 number. And also look at the Hawaii Community Foundation's website, see what programs that they are sharing their funds with and see what they're amplifying. And that can give you an idea of the resources that are out there.
That's right. Well, again, it has been really an honor for all for both Yanji and I to be a part of this conversation, and we thank you for allowing us into your homes, on your phones, wherever you may have watched this broadcast, to bring you information. It has been really quite an experience, and we are so thankful for all of you, for all of your support, and all our loyal viewers who have continued to watch us over these past few months.
That's right. And we will see you right back here on Monday, 10:30, Monday and Wednesday. Put it in your calendar. Thanks, of course, also to the team at the Honolulu Star-Advertiser. They've done a lot to support us, and we appreciate working with them as well. So thanks to all of you. We will see you on Monday with Colleen Hanabusa. Until then, have a safe and happy 4th of July weekend. Please remember, the more that you do, the quicker this can all pass.
Until then, ahui ho.